Bernie Sanders indicates he may fold again as Democrats rally to get behind Biden. The coronavirus causes major shifts over the weekend, and the world markets dipped, but it may not be for the reason that you're thinking of. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. I left you guys alone for a weekend. I left you with the country. I said, go ahead, take care of it. I'm going to go see my parents, and we'll talk again when we get back, and the country will all be normal. And you broke it. I left you alone for 2 days, and you broke the country. Now, it wasn't just you, it was everybody, and I think there was a lot of concerted effort that went along into this, and we're going to talk a bit about this. Before we get started, though, make sure you go over and check us out over on freedomscoop.com, or check us out live on DLive, YouTube, Twitch, or Periscope, or Twitter, or Facebook. We got that fixed as well, so we are streaming over to there as well. So go ahead and check us out anyway, or over there, rather. So, we'll start out talking about the election, which is coming up. We've got another Super Tuesday coming up, and it is bound to be much different and possibly much better than anything we've seen in the last Super Tuesday, because now we have come down to the point where we are going to have the debate between Statler and Waldorf. For those of you who are not familiar, those are the two Muppets that sit up in the balcony, and it is going to be absolutely epic. And of course, the DNC has done everything that they could to try and keep Tulsi Gabbard out of the next debate, which is coming up in Phoenix. I believe that is on the 15th it's going to be coming up. It's on a Sunday. So look for that. It's going to be amazing to watch. We're going to have a lot of fun with it. Now, the first thing that we have to talk about is the fact that Tulsi Gabbard is out of this, because the DNC just made yet another rule change to their debate schedule, saying that, because it used to be before, to get up for this debate, it was that you had to have at least one delegate to get on, and they figured that was going to be the easiest way to keep Representative Gabbard off the stage, because, I mean, who wants to see her go up after the king other than me and pretty much everybody else in the country? Nobody else seems to want to see that, but it's a shame because we really, really need to see that. And, I mean, she is running, and she's put this kind of money into this and into campaigning. She should at least be allowed to have her voice heard. But, I mean, there's nobody there for her to pick off anymore, so I can see why the DNC wouldn't want her to go anymore. So, that'll be coming up here in the near future, but one of the things that really caught my attention when I started looking through Twitter when I got home yesterday was the fact that it was on a Twitter post from Education for Liberals stating that Bernie had called Biden his friend and said that he planned to endorse Biden if Biden won the Democratic nomination. Hold on, let me react to that just a second. Sorry. Maybe a little bit more excessive than I needed it to be. So, as soon as it loads here, we'll look at Real Clear Politics has got the story from Fox News. On Chris Wallace's show, Chris Wallace was talking to Senator Bernie Sanders. There was an interview here, and I'll read a bit of that here. This is from Tim Haynes reposting from Fox News. Wallace, Senator, now this is a two-man race, and you're going to have a two-man debate next Sunday. How hard do you go after Joe Biden without carving each other up and helping Donald Trump win re-elections? And Sanders says, well, Chris, that's the right question. Joe Biden is a friend of mine. Joe Biden is a decent guy. What Joe has said is if I win the nomination, he'll be there for me. And I have said if he wins the nomination, I'll be there for him, because we both recognize that we have a president who is a pathological liar, and I say without any joy in my heart, as someone who's running a corrupt administration, somebody, apparently, who has never read the Constitution of the United States and thinks he's above the law. So Biden and I, no matter who wins this thing, will be together in defeating Trump. How, Bernie Bros, do you justify any of this? I've got to ask that. How do you justify anything that got said in that statement here? Meanwhile, I'm going to get rid of Real Clear Politics because that's going to bog my processor down to no end. So that's, going into this at this point, especially statistically, Biden has an almost 100% chance at the nomination. According to Real Clear Politics, the betting odds were showing the fact that he was most likely going to get, or he's got 86.3% on the betting odds, which Vegas is usually the best caller for who's going to make it to the end because they don't want to lose money, so they do the homework to go with all of this. So Biden is going to be to the end, and your revolutionary candidate is not going to be a revolutionary anymore. He is going to just bold up and say, okay, you guys screwed me over again, and now I'm going to support your candidate. Because that's what. And he's not even running as a Democrat this time. He is still registered as an independent, which I don't understand how he got by the DNC rules on that. But yes, he is still registered as an independent at this point. So he's not even supposed to be running in this primary. But yeah, he's got no backbone at this point. He has come out and said he's going to do the exact same thing that he did with Hillary last year. So your revolution is dead, and it's not going to happen. And even if it happens, he's just going to fold over for the DNC. He is a pawn at this point of the DNC. He's in there to try and pull in the extremist faction that wants the revolution. He's in there to get their attention, but not necessarily give them what they want. They're not going to give them the revolution. They're just going to try and pull them in and take their votes and screw them over again. So this is absolutely great. And I cannot wait for Milwaukee. And you bet your ass that with this being said, I am going to be there. You bet your ass I'm going to be there. Because I've got to see this happen in real time. I've got to be there in person to see this happen. So, with that being said, tomorrow we're having a second round of Super Tuesday. 6 states get up to vote tomorrow, and we're going to see, a bit more of this now that we're down to a two-person race, now that we don't have Bloomberg in, and everybody's thrown the support, for the most part, behind Biden. I do foresee him walking away with this. I don't see Bernie Sanders' policies working in Michigan and places other than the universities. I don't see any of his policies working anywhere else. This is going to be Biden walking away tomorrow, and I can pretty much say that with a very, very heavy vote of confidence. Bernie's going to walk away with delegates tomorrow, but this is going to be a Biden walking away victory, which how the front runner for the Democrat Party becomes a 77-year-old Alzheimer's patient is beyond me. There is something else going on. I have to say it. There is something else going on. I don't know what it is that's going on, but there is something else going on with these people that they think that this is a winning strategy for them. In other news over the weekend, let's get up here to Fox News. So, according to Fox News, this is from Bree Stimson over there, Klobuchar ticket slip-up at Biden event in Michigan sparks speculation she'll be his VP pick. Bree goes on to write, is her ticket punched for a ride on the Biden train? Senator Amy Klobuchar, Democrat Minnesota, sparked vice presidential speculation Saturday when she said she was joining Joe Biden's ticket in an apparent slip of the tongue during a campaign rally for the former vice president in Michigan. Klobuchar, who has been stumping for Biden across the state ahead of this Tuesday's primary, since she dropped out of the race and endorsed him last weekend, told a crowd in Grand Rapids she couldn't think of a better way to end my candidacy than to join the ticket. As the crowd cheered, she shook her head at her mistake and laughed, kidding. Mackenzie Frost over on Twitter posted the video. A slip this morning by Senator Amy Klobuchar during the campaign event for Joe Biden in Grand Rapids. I could not think of a better way to end my candidacy, as hard as it was to do with our beloved staff and everyone else, than to join the tick, dash. Which, that is funny. As hard as it was to do with our beloved staff that are chained up in the basement and having alarm clocks and toasters and crap thrown at them. This was publicity. I don't necessarily believe that Klobuchar is going to be the vice presidential nominee. I could see it happening, but she's got so much baggage that's sitting behind her right now. If they're actually in this thing to win, which I don't believe they're in this to win. First off, they're not going to want to risk a special election in Minnesota because Minnesota has been moving redder and redder and redder outside of the Twin Cities area. I've seen that. I know people that are in that. I know they've still got the strong union lead outside the Twin Cities, but for the most part, the rural areas have been taking more hold in the state's politics and doing more voting for this. So I would definitely not want to risk a special election in Minnesota to replace a Senate seat. And I would be more worried about what would happen if the government would have to appoint one, because that could go either way too. Which that could be baked into the cake as well, because they do, I believe, still have a Democrat state governance. So that actually could be the other way. But if they were to risk a special election, I couldn't see that risk, especially not there, especially in the Senate, because a special election could go several different ways, and I'm sure that there are a bunch of people lined up in Minnesota to try and take back that seat. So I don't see Klobuchar as being the one. Honestly, I think it's probably going to be a standout state politician. I don't think it's necessarily going to be one of the people that were up on the stage. Even though a lot of them were vying for the nod, I don't see that happening. In other news, we have Kamala Harris, and this is via Politico. Kamala Harris endorses Biden. She becomes the latest former 2020 rival to back the former vice president, which is interesting because California otherwise went pretty overwhelmingly for Bernie Sanders. Some of the delegate counts came in, and he did win California running away. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough for him to take the Super Tuesday or take the lead in anything, but, I mean, California was in the tank for Bernie Sanders to begin with. But now, California Senator and former prosecutor Kamala Harris is endorsing him. Now, this, on the other hand, Kamala I do see as a viable vice presidential pick. It would probably be lower on the list of people who are viable, but her I could actually see as being a viable pick for this. This is by Rashika Dugai. I'm sorry, Rashika. I'm not even going to attempt that. Senator Kamala Harris on Sunday threw her support behind former Vice President Joe Biden, adding to his campaign's post-Super Tuesday surge. In a video she shared on Twitter, the California senator, once the lone black woman in what was a diverse and large 2020 Democratic field, said she would do everything in her power to help elect Biden. Having just arrived in Alabama to commemorate the 55th anniversary of Bloody Sunday in Selma, Harris said she was thinking about the generations of people who fought and died for civil rights and helped our nation achieve its ideals. So, they're lining up behind him, and like I said, Bernie does not have much of a chance going into this, unfortunately. I would like to see more of the fight going through the next 5 months, but I'm pretty sure that Bernie's going to be suspending his campaign pretty shortly. We will see what happens in this next round of Super Tuesday, but everybody else around Bernie Sanders is lining up to get behind Joe Biden, and given his record of folding in the face of the DNC establishment, I do see him folding like a lawn chair and doing it the same. And that is a line I do say it that I did borrow from Education for Liberals over on Twitter, because that was how he mentioned it as well. Bernie folding up like a lawn chair. On the other side of, well, not on the other side of the aisle, but on the other side of the news, less happy news at this point. This is according to CNN. Let me get to the top of the headline here. Mixed White House. Oh, that is not the article that I wanted. I'm sorry. That was on regular NBC. This is on CNN. Bernie Sanders says he never expected to see a Nazi flag waved at a major political rally. This is by Devon Cole over at CNN. Senator Bernie Sanders said Sunday that he never expected in his life as an American to see a Nazi flag waved at a major political rally several days after a man unfurled one during the speech the Democrat presidential candidate gave at the event in Arizona. In an interview with CNN's Jake Tapper on State of the Union, Sanders called the incident unspeakable and disgusting. Obviously, it is unspeakable. It is disgusting. It is something, I got to tell you, I never expected in my life. As an American, to see a swastika at a major political rally, it's horrible, the Vermont senator said. On Thursday, a man was kicked out of a Sanders rally after he unfurled a flag with a swastika on it. The man was immediately booed by the crowd. Members of the audience ripped the flag from the individual's hand, and the individual was quickly removed by security. Well, Senator Sanders, there's something that you need to understand about the ideology that you espouse. First off, it says socialist right in the name of the National Socialist Workers Party. And yes, I understand people are going to run up and say, but the Democratic People's Republic of Korea isn't really democratic. Right. But the Germans in the late 30s did advocate for a state takeover of all of the industry to keep it out of the hands of a certain level of people. Much like your beloved senator, even though he won't say it anymore, he has his entire life espoused that same ideology of a major national takeover, and so are many of his more ardent fans over on Twitter, claiming that they do want to see that 70% or higher tax rate. A lot of them, I got into a fight with some of them over the weekend, or before the weekend, and I've seen some other people that have stepped up with me, but they're wishing for a 70% tax rate on the middle class. They are absolutely wishing for that. And a state takeover of industry. And for the most part, and this is the scariest part, and I've said this numerous times on my show and on other shows as well, if you replace billionaire with Jew and reread all of Bernie Sanders' ideologies from the 70s on till today, just replace the word billionaire with Jew, and it'll be like you're reading Mein Kampf right over again. You've got a 1% segment of the population that is causing all of the woes for all of the people in the population. It's like reading Coulter all over again. So, yeah, I am not surprised by this at all, and honestly, I'm a little surprised that, the racist undertones of the National Socialist Workers Parties are, of course, why the progressives don't want to be associated with it. But like I said, they are like one step removed away from the ideologies of Adolf Hitler back in the 30s. So good job, Bernie Sanders. And yeah, the same thing would have happened. They want to try and say that Trump is a Nazi and he would be welcoming all this. But if they'd have done the same thing in a Trump rally, the person wouldn't have been carried out by security. He would have been carried out by the crowd. Because there are a few of the white nationalists that do believe that Trump is the Coulterite image of Trump, the racist Coulterite image of Trump. But for the most part, we don't stand for that shit. And we execute it from our party. We get rid of these people because nobody wants them around, especially not us. You get judged by the things that you've done in your life, not the color of your skin. So that is what I have on election. So let's talk a bit about coronavirus that's coming up here, and the news article that I did try to start out with. So the markets tumbled over the weekend. We're going to talk about that just a little bit here. But right now, the mainstreams want you to believe it's because Trump mishandled the coronavirus thing. There's actually another big underlying cause for it over the weekend. And we saw the sell-off last week before any of this happened. So there's a reason that they're trying to sell this to you as a Trump thing and a coronavirus thing, but what we see over the weekend wasn't. But let's have a look here. NBC live blog: coronavirus updates live. World markets tumble as anxiety grows in DC. Here's the latest on the coronavirus outbreak. World markets tumbled overnight with investors bracing for the economic fallout of the epidemic, with a shocking all-out price war added to anxiety. So they are admitting the fact that the price war is there. We'll talk about that in a bit. But this NBC article from, this is live blog, so it doesn't give an author. Meanwhile, members of Congress are becoming increasingly nervous about the coronavirus, and there is growing pressure on leadership to take steps to protect lawmakers, even potentially recessing for periods of weeks, two Democratic congressional sources said. In Italy, some 16 million people remain in quarantine after the government announced a lockdown in Lombardy after the northern regions. So, while I was at my mom and dad's, we got up and we had breakfast and everything. And while I was making breakfast on Sunday morning, my dad had been watching CNN, and I was amazed by the fact that CNN, I'm not really that amazed, but for 2 hours with this going on, and the fact that I didn't know about the other piece of news that I'm going to be talking about in a bit, I didn't know about that until this morning when I went to look into this. And it happened on Saturday. All that we saw for 2 hours was a panel of people bashing Trump and then Hillary Clinton bashing Trump. So, yes, they are trying to pin all of this market tumble on what Trump said over the coronavirus. So, let's have a look at that as well. This is also from NBC News. This is not from the live blog here. This is the article that I tried to read when we were talking about the Nazi flag thing. Mixed White House messaging on coronavirus sparks internal frustration. White House officials acknowledge President Trump is simply not the same wavelength as his team, but say there isn't much they can do to change his public tone. This is by Shannon Pettypiece, Haley Jackson, and Monica Alba over at NBC. Palm Beach, Florida. White House officials are growing increasingly frustrated at what they see as President Donald Trump's consistent bids to downplay the severity of the coronavirus outbreak, a tendency that has led to a clash in messaging with public health officials. Those mixed signals were on display Sunday as the top infectious disease doctor at the National Institutes of Health, Anthony Fauci, warned the elderly and medically vulnerable to avoid large crowds and long trips or cruises, and Surgeon General Jerome Adams told the public to be prepared for more cases and deaths. No shit, Sherlock. I don't need the Attorney General to tell me that. I've already decided that the longest trip that I'm going to take is 12 hours, and it's going to be in the comfort of my pickup truck because I don't want to get on a 40,000-pound incubator. You dolts. And anybody who is not heeding this, not heeding what you've been hearing for the last 5 weeks, you deserve what you get. I'm sorry. You have been told that this is infectious. You've been told to be cautious of this. You've been told that it's going to take time for the testing kits to get approved by the FDA and to get manufactured into the levels that they need. You've been told this for a month and a half. No, this is not the pandemic and the epidemic that we're being told that it's going to be. No, it is not going to kill as many people as the mainstream media wants you to believe. But dear God, don't try to encourage it either. Let's read on. The president also told reporters Saturday night that he wouldn't be postponing his political rallies, which can attract upwards of 15,000 attendees, and wasn't concerned about the virus getting closer to the White House. Which, okay, I understand that, and he's got plenty of security around him, plenty of reason. He's got the best doctors in the world. Of course, he's not going to be that worried about himself getting it or any of it getting into the White House. They've got that there, but the thing that they've been focusing on, of course, is, let's see if I can find it in the article here. I don't see it in this article. The thing that they've been focused on, of course, is the fact that Pence came out and said that they're working day and night to try and make sure that they get the test out, but they're having test shortages at this point. Pence came out and said that over the weekend, and Trump, in a statement, when he was asked about it, said that anybody who wants a test can get a test. Now, think about this for a second. And, of course, you have to remember the fact that anything Trump does is going to be wrong to these mainstream media people. But as the President of the United States, you've got one of two choices here with a major pandemic like this coming down. Now, of course, you've got the mainstream media and even some of us in the alt media telling you that hunker down, be prepared, get ready to panic, and get ready for those food runs. We've all been telling you this for 5 weeks. But now Trump is sitting here with the choice to either amplify that and cause more panic and more food runs, possibly some more shifts in the economy, and possibly, of course, fights and riots in supermarkets. He can come out and tell you to panic and do that, or he can tell you to be calm and we're taking care of this. Putting some peace out there, making sure people go out peacefully, get their supplies, making sure that they're not fighting and killing each other, and possibly quelling some of the fears and the sell-offs that he has going on there, because he is presiding over one of the best economies we've seen in my lifetime. And I'm sure that he's doing everything in his power to try and keep that as one of the best economies I've seen in my lifetime. So he's got two options. I'm sure, of course, that if he'd tried to incite panic and told everybody to hunker down, bunker down, and be afraid to death of this, that would have been the same thing. He's inciting a riot. He's inciting panic. He's inciting all of this. He's telling people, and they're also saying on this NBC article that this was shorthand as well. But he's telling people that they're doing everything that they can to make sure that they can get the test out so that if you want to get the test, you can. The administrative process is slow. This is not China. We value people here, and we don't want to give them a test that's going to poison them or kill them or be inaccurate so they go home, be complacent, and spread this even further. There's more testing involved than just taking whatever we can get out of China and giving it to people. I'm sure the FDA is running around the clock at this point to try and make sure that this is out, viable, and able to be produced in mass quantities because we are seeing cases rise in this country. So all that I see off of this article is another opportunity for the mainstream media to say that everything that Donald Trump does is wrong and that he needs to come out of the White House. And I am seeing this a lot too on Twitter. It's trending this morning that we need to impeach Trump again because he's mishandling this whole thing and it's causing the stock market to crash. Which, when the stock market was in the tank, well, the economy wasn't tied to the stock market. And when it was going up, oh, well, it's Obama's economy and it's not a measure of anything anyway. It's funny how it's so convenient to use the stock market as a measure of failure for a president when it's going down, but it means nothing when it's going up. So that is what I have on the coronavirus. But get out there. If you are not already prepared, get prepared, people. So let's talk about what's actually causing this market crash going on here. So this is according to oilprice.com. Get out of here, advertisement. I don't care about you. All right. So this is according to oilprice.com. Michael Kern over there says oil prices crash 25% as oil war begins. And this is something that I could have used to see on CNN. This is a story we could have used to see from the mainstream media who wants us to panic over the economy crashing over a pandemic. Because I guarantee you that all these people who are calling this the Trump coronavirus crash have no idea that this even happened yet. Let's have a look. Russia has just sparked what may end up being among the ugliest oil price wars in recent history. And Saudi Arabia is firing back as the two oil superpowers face off. American oil companies may end up being as the biggest victims. And we'll read an article from Forbes that actually carries that forward a little bit further, carries that same idea. But Forbes is much more positive about it. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced Sunday that present oil prices were sustainable for the Russian economy, adding that Russia had the tools to react to any adverse results of the spread of the coronavirus on the global financial climate. I want to stress that for the Russian budget, our economy, the current oil prices level is acceptable, Putin explained in a meeting with Russian energy officials. Now, some oil analysts are anticipating barrel prices as low as $20 within the year. Some experts have suggested that Russia's move is intended to counter U.S. shale producers and hit back against the U.S. for targeting the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline connecting Russia and Germany, which is another thing that I think we should have known more about in this country, but of course, it didn't fit the narrative of Trump-Russia collusion, so it didn't get a lot of reporting there, but we have put major sanctions against the Nord Stream pipeline that would connect Russia to Germany to try and keep it from being built, because it goes against EU interests, and for the most part it goes against our interests too. The only person that it does benefit is Putin. So yes, let's sanction it because our president is a Putin puppet. But that's not the only thing that happened here, of course, because as we read on, Saudi Arabia blasted back in kind Sunday morning. Saudi Arabia dropped its own oil weapon. Its latest plans will not only reduce its unrefined prices to Chinese consumers by as much as $6 or $7 per barrel, but it is also reportedly looking to increase its daily unrefined output by as much as 2 million barrels per day into an increasingly oversupplied international market. I hate to tell you this, But the only people that win in a situation like what we're seeing over there is the United States. We use more oil per person than anybody else in the world. And if you're going to drop those prices, we're going to take the money that we're going to save on oil and invest it somewhere else. We will diversify our economy over this. This is going to be a temporary crash. But you keep in mind the fact that with these two countries fighting over oil production and fighting over the prices to try and beat each other out on this, first off, Russia did this in retaliatory fashion to the Nord 2 pipeline, but also to go after U.S. shale producers. So there's a two front on the United States, but of course, with the two of them going after each other on the oil prices, yes, our oil producers in this country are going to take a hit right away, and like it or not, our economy is still very much tied to oil. So there's going to be a temporary hit to our oil producers, but think about that. If oil prices drop like that to the point where we're filling up at $1.25 or $1.50 a gallon, we're going to buy other stuff. I've got a 33-gallon tank in my pickup truck. So, I mean, if it drops to $1.50 a gallon, that goes from like a $60 to $70 fill up to like a $45 fill up. I will spend that money on something else. I'll spend it on equipment. I'll spend it trying to make Freedom Scoop better. I will spend that money on other stuff, and the American people will do the same. That money is not just going to sit idle. And yes, like I said, while our oil barons are going to suffer from this, dropping oil prices in the United States is going to do nothing but increase our economy going forward. Even if we do see a temporary crash off of this, yeah, it's going to do nothing but increase our economy. And Forbes gives us the same sentiment here. So we'll see what Forbes has to say. The oil war's real target is the United States. This is from Tim Tregold, contributor in Asia. Excuse me. Officially, the oil war, which has cut the price of crude by 30% in the last 24 hours, is a fight between Saudi Arabia and Russia, but the real target of both is the United States. In what could prove to be one of the world's greatest ever foot shooting exercises, a standoff in an Austrian boardroom has the hallmarks of a personality clash, which could trigger an economic crisis for both Russia and Saudi Arabia. Yes, because their economies are both completely tied to oil at this point. So if they're dropping the prices out of this to try and price each other out, yeah, they're going to do nothing but hurt their own people off of this. Cheap oil is a win for the U.S., which is the cause of the dispute courtesy of its born-again oil industry, might suffer a modest buffeting, but could also emerge as a winner because cheap oil benefits is deeper and more diverse economy. Cheap oil benefits its deeper and more diverse economy. I apologize. That didn't sound right at first, but I missed the T somehow when I was reading that. The catalyst for what's happening in oil, as well as in a number of other sectors of the global economy, is the coronavirus outbreak, or to be more accurate, the fear of the virus and how it appears to be slowing production and investment. Oil demand, which had been falling over much of 2019, as China and the U.S. waged a trade war, took a fresh tumble when China took drastic action to stem the spread of the virus, cutting demand for most commodities as it quarantined sections of its economy. So, yes. Now, they're quarantining out. They're not using as much stuff. So, of course, they're going to try and get the cheaper stuff out of this. And yes, like Tim said in this article, this is going to benefit us in the long run, long term. But, of course, everybody only sees the sell-off. And we're going into an election year, and we have a mainstream media that wants to blame the president for everything, so much so that, like I said, this happened on Saturday, and I'm only finding out about this at 8 o'clock on Monday morning. Well, I'm already supposed to be live, but I overslept because of daylight savings time. So, yes, this is going to be an interesting thing to see, and I'm interested to see how soon it is before people start talking about this on the mainstreams, and how soon people talk about this in mainstream discourse, because I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of people out there that still don't know that this is even going on. All right. that's what I have for news. So we're going to close out today with something that gives me faith in humanity again. So I spent the weekend in small town Wisconsin. I'm not going to say the name of the town. Needless to say, it was one of the small communities close to the town I went to high school in, but that's all so small up there that you could dox me if you knew where it was. It's that easy because it's that small. There are that few people. Everybody knows everybody. And while I wouldn't mind if I got doxxed because I'm protected, I don't want my family involved in this. That's been something that's very important to me as well. I mean, uh, my sister depends on a business in the local area, and I couldn't forgive myself if any of that got affected. So I'm not going to let you guys dox me at this point. I know it's going to happen eventually, but I'm going to put it off as far as I can. But the reason that I'm talking about the small town that I grew up in is the fact that I got a chance to look around, and I live pretty close to a small city in Wisconsin, and really close to a major city in Wisconsin, and relatively close to a major city in the United States. I live near Milwaukee and Chicago, so I get to see a lot of the city stuff, and some of it I'm close enough that some of it has bled off over to here as well. So I get to see some of that, and I start to think that this is spreading everywhere. The transgender thing, the craziness, the Trump derangement syndrome. I do see it from a more urban point of view because I'm close enough to the urbans that I see it that way. But I got to spend some time away from that for a little while, and I mean, it's so interesting to me to go back and see the traditionalists in this country. I've got no qualm with anybody who believes that he's a different gender, but I know that we have some of the rapid onset gender dysphoria out there, and some of that is trendy. It's not necessarily that these people believe that they're a woman in a man's body or vice versa, but it's trendy right now. It's something that's cool. It's something that's been propped up by a lot of mainstream outlets, and you'd think that it's everywhere if you're this close to Chicago or Milwaukee or something like, or Madison for that matter. You think that it's everywhere, but it's not. There's still traditionalism out there, and the country life is still holding that traditionalism. It's still holding onto the values that made this country great in the first place: the free market exchange of ideas, capitalism, the fact that people can discuss the ideas in general discourse without getting into a fight or burning a business down or anything like that. I do hope that the rest of this country can get to that, but I mean, I took some time and I played with my nieces and nephews, and yes, my nieces play with some of the boy stuff because they have one older brother, and I mean, he's got the hand-me-down toys, but they still, I mean, my middle niece, the middle child in the family, clings to her unicorns like there's no tomorrow and takes care of them like a baby. And the nephew, the oldest one, just wants to crash up cars and make a bunch of noise and shoot guns and stuff. And I mean, the youngest one doesn't do much but yell and drool at this point. But I mean, we'll see how she develops, and she may get to be a bit tomboyish too. But there's a difference between being tomboyish and transgender. And I mean, if you're tomboyish, like my sister was growing up in the big city, they're going to tell you, okay, we'll take the puberty blocker and we're going to try and make you into a boy. But when you're out in the country like that, the children have the opportunity to grow up in a traditional fashion. And my sister grew up to be incredibly feminine. She still got the bit of the tomboyish side. She goes out, she hunts with her boyfriend. But for the most part, she retained the femininity. The tomboyishness was a phase, partially possibly due to the fact that she had an elder brother that she was looking to for an example. I played with Legos. I played with guns. I played with action figures. She just wanted somebody to play with, especially in a small town. So, the traditionalism is still there, folks. We see some of the decay in some of the bigger cities, but it's not everywhere. So take heart with that, because we can still raise our families in the way that we see, even if we have to move out of the bigger cities and move away from some of the conveniences. We can still have a traditional style family without the infection of what the mainstream media is trying to ram down our throats. Anyway, we will be back here later today with 2 additional hours of content as I welcome the wonderful Mrs. RRC to the program. And I think the RRC himself is going to be sitting in backup here because well, they wanted to work together. So I'm definitely interested in interviewing her and getting her hot takes on the news that we have out here. So check us out there. I think we're going to go a little bit early, but check my Discord and my Twitter for updates. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.